we replicate that data to a completely geographically separate data center. So some may see that as overkill. We really don't. Everyone's familiar with different industries and even some of our competitors having blackouts in their data centers. Data centers are not these impenetrable fortresses of good where nothing goes wrong and people don't make mistakes. So really we're just practicing what we preach, which is backing up off-site. It just happens to be that our business is your backup. So we're going to replicate that data to a completely separate data center, of which we have 10 globally, which is the largest backup footprint in the world today. Some of the other items we have is we really don't limit our users and what they can back up and how quickly they can back it up. We're about to publish some results of some tests we did in some neutral environments where we competed against a number of different services, and we came out as the fastest by far in many of them. We don't throttle your bandwidth. We don't have a limit in bandwidth that you can use per day, and then at that point your bandwidth drops off. We don't limit where you can pull data from. A lot of services don't let you back up data from external hard drives, map drives, network drives, etc. Really our mentality has been, this is a business backup tool. If it's important to your business, you should be able to back it up. You pay for what you're backing up, and that's what it is, and you buy in blocks. A lot of our competitors have priced with the scenario of having somewhat of a loss, and then the profitability really comes over recurring revenue over a number of years. So having subscription models where you base out your profitability over 2 or 3 years based on the limitations that you've set for this product. Again, we don't set limitations. So if you have a 30 meg pipe, the only slowdown you'll see is any general slowdown you have with time of day you're using that. And then, of course, the SSL slows it down just a bit. So generally, you can be backing up as quickly as 70 to 80% of what your available bandwidth is. Whereas most services are going to throttle you down to no more than 500 kilobits per second. So you can see that backing up large data sets can be quite a feat with such limitations. Unlimited machines, again, we don't have licensing per machine, so being able to run test recoveries with our service is very simple, very easy. You don't have to go on site, spend your weekend at someone else's office. From your home office or from your office, you can sign in with your user's permission, of course, and recover data to a drive, and then you just increase your SLA. Now you have an off-site manual backup where you have a backup, a physical backup on your premises, so that if they have an issue and they need to get a lot of information back, not only can you start recovering from the online backup, but you can also drive out with what you backed up at whatever frequency, monthly, weekly. That depends on the client, what they're willing to pay. Again, the free integrated local backup is just part of the service. You should have a local backup, because what if your net's down? What if you have a large amount of information? Online backup still is limited to bandwidth. So if you have a large data set, you should be able to back up from multiple sources. Again, multiple sources is a backup solution. Having one thing in place, that's okay for consumers, but really if it comes down to being in business or out of business, you want to make sure you have that, again, belt and suspenders approach. We also have file filters that just allow you to more easily do this. The scheduling and the versioning, as well as the Delta level backup, are very important together. So to explain what that means, unlimited version history first. Unlimited version history is a function where we don't charge you for additional versions of a file. So if you're backing up your Outlook PST file, let's say it's 1 gig on day 1 and 2 gigs at the end of the year. And you're an individual user, so you're backing this up, say 3 times a day. You wouldn't need 1.5 terabytes to 2 terabytes of backup space to have access to all, 1,000 or so versions of that file. All you would need is a 2 gig backup account. That's very important when it comes to, one, a lot of different security compliance. So SAS-70, SSA-16, SOX. Basically, financial and legal services love this function because what it means is we never purge data. The only time data gets deleted from your account is if the user deletes the data from their account. We never purge if you delete it from your local machine or any other instance. So that combined with how we do our subsequent backups, which is a block level incremental backup, meaning traditional systems and most systems out there, Mozy, Carbonite, they do what's called a incremental backup. So every time a backup runs, it identifies files that have and have not changed. If a file has changed, it backs up the entire file again, going through the whole process of compressing and transferring. Our service, we see a file that's changed and we go another step and we say, well, at a block level, what has changed about this file? And it's just a unit of measurement. Think it's so many cups in a pint, pints in a quart, quarts in a gallon, so many bits in a byte, bytes in a block, blocks in a file. So we go to the block level of this file, and in the case of your Outlook, most services transferring at 500K, maybe it takes an hour to 2 or 3 hours to back up that file. Our service is only going to be dealing with a delta of that file, so maybe 20 megs instead of 2 gigs, and we're not going to throttle, so maybe this backup happens in 10 to 15 minutes instead of 2 hours. So it's very significant in how quickly you can run backups. And when it comes to preventing user error, which is the most frequent type of user error, the most frequent type of data loss, and also the least likely to already be accounted for, you can run backups as frequently as user error can possibly occur. User error is one of those things that doesn't seem like a big deal and it flies under the radar, and then over time you realize that it certainly adds up to a significant amount, such as the HP and SCORE study shows. So a bit like ATM fees. $1 here, $1 there, doesn't seem like much. End of the year, you spent $2,000 using an ATM. The user level ability of having a regularly recurring backup on an hourly basis or multiple hours means that you can best set yourself up to mitigate user error. There's simply no way to prevent user error. People will just make mistakes. That's guaranteed. So you have to set yourself up in the best way to react to it, and having a regular backup where you don't have to schedule around your versioning is really the only way to do it. The only other companies who really have the good Delta backup system only have 10 versions, or 30 versions is also typical. But that limits you in how frequently you can run a backup, because it limits you in how far you can go back. And just to show, for example, let me pull up my personal account here. So here's SOS Software. I'm going to log into my account, and just show what the versioning looks like. I've had this account for a few years now, and some would say, well, if you have so many versions, is it difficult to manage? And it really isn't. It's really quite simple. Here's the wizard screen. So I go to Restore Online here in the wizard, and it's going to refresh the data from the server. And then it's going to give me a bold number besides each date that I have a relevant backup. So this is September 2011. Sure, great. Well, let's see how far we can go back. I'm going to go back to 2009. So let's go back to October 16th of 2009. Or actually, do I have any from September? So October 16th, I hit Next. And it pulls up a single machine that I was backing up data from. And I can go down the list. I can see a list of all these files here, the date modified, October 16th, and what we have available. Now let's go back. Let's say I want to see today's backup. So I go to today, or let's go to yesterday, and just the most recent. And all of a sudden now, I see that I've added, since 2009, I've backed up data from 6 other machines, including my iPhone and my iPad. So I've backed up, my contacts using the SOS iPhone application that's in the iTunes store, or the App Store rather. I have since had a new laptop added I use for business, multiple drives. So here, I could see different versions of files. So I get a drop down with the version list. I can pull the columns apart to see a little more detail. And really, if you want to see even more detail than that, then it's always good to go to the classic view, because then it gives you a much bigger screen. We're not going to go too much more into that now, but you can see how powerful this versioning function is and how flexible it lets you be. And you can see that I have multiple machines, and this didn't cost anything as far as a licensing agreement. It was just I happened to be on these other machines, training room, demo 2, boardroom, and I had made changes to documents and wanted to protect those changes. So the software was installed, and I ran a backup, no problem. Any questions on the feature set and the versioning? I have a couple questions here. I have one question, Sean. Is SOS recognized by cyber risk insurance carriers? I haven't actually done any research into any specific cyber risk insurance carriers, but if we aren't, it definitely should be. Really, I would assume that cyber risk, they don't sponsor any specific company. They probably specific a certain type of technology with certain security functions. It wouldn't make a whole lot of sense from a resource perspective to just sponsor specific businesses. And another question, is SOS capable of doing a comparative backup? A comparative backup, also known as deduplication. No, we don't do deduplication, excuse me, because we don't consider it really a function of